This game and we have a history. In fact, had I not played it, I think my life may have taken a very different turn. A bit of history. Tokyo Mirage Sessions, or as I like to call it, the Emblem Master Tokyo Idol project, released exclusively on the Nintendo Wii U to Japanese audiences in December 2015, and again to the rest of the world in June 2016. It was made with the intent to create a spin-off / crossover game between the franchises Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem. Sold on that premise in its early announcement in 2013, fans of both franchises were eagerly anticipating what kind of crossover the madmen at Atlus were coming up with. 2 years later, when the game was officially shown off at E3 2015, people were confused. When Tokyo Mirage Sessions came out, it was met with a chorus of, "What? Huh? What is this? Oh my god, what was that? Supposed to be Crom? Is that Crom? What is going on?" It had the unfortunate side effect of turning off both of its target audiences, both the Shin Megami Tensei and Persona fans as well as the Fire Emblem fans. And it isn't difficult to imagine that this expectation colored many people's playthroughs of the game, including my own. Let's flash back to June 2016. Coincidentally, this was around the time I began this channel back when it was still called Fire Emblem Beyond Fates, and I was doing my fan-made support conversations, which were starting to actually gain some traction. However, I wanted to expand a bit more and decided I wanted to try out streaming. It was around this time that I met one of my first real YouTube friends, Kyle, who you may know as MamoDXX, who recommended I play Tokyo Mirage Sessions as he got really into it at the time, and hasn't really stopped, to be perfectly honest. Thus, these two events naturally collided, and it resulted in my first full stream playthrough. It was a weird experience to say the least, but it ended up being incredibly fun, and for better or for worse, kinda helped define who I am as a YouTuber. If you really want to see some of the shenanigans, you could catch that playthrough on my half-dead second channel, MaxHP, by the way. It's a tiny bit cringe by today's standards, but I think some of it still holds up. Oh, like this?
Fire Emblem. What does this have to do with Fire Emblem?
Yeah!
So let's talk about this game here. Let's just tell it like it is. This game is a bad crossover. Just plain and simple. It doesn't represent either series very well, it alienates both fan bases, and it pulls a lot of crap that can be infuriating. But I also want to give this game a fair shake, and judge it as a game alone. I'll admit that when I first played this game on stream, I didn't exactly give it the benefit of the doubt. Plus, it's difficult to get invested in a game when you're also trying to entertain your audience, and we were doing all these crazy funny voices for all the characters and joking around.
Very well. Then I shall continue to watch over you for a while longer. And that's what I learned today. And end card, credits.
So I wasn't really immersing myself in the experience as I normally would when playing a story-based game. So I decided to replay it again off stream for this video. This time to let myself try to really get into it. It's also important to note that between the time that I played it on stream and the time I'm playing it for this video, I have since started playing Persona 5. Point is, I have a little bit more context for what Shin Megami Tensei and Persona are all about, so I have that knowledge going in. I've also, become more familiar with the, subject matter, for lack of a better term. So there's also that. So one more final note is that I'm going to be using the footage from my stream playthrough because frankly, I do not want to record all of that footage again and have that take up space on my hard drive. I just can't be bothered. Sorry. You're going to have to deal. Let's just get right into this. The basic premise of the game is that you are 18-year-old high school student and actual block of wood, Itsuki Aoi. You meet up with your childhood friend and best girl, Tsubasa Uri. And she's auditioning at some event to become the next big idol to follow in the footsteps of her sister, who mysteriously disappeared along with many others in a tragic event 5 years ago called the Mass Disappearance. As expected, things go awry and Tsubasa is kidnapped and taken into a mysterious realm called the Idolosphere, and you gotta save her. It's here we learn about the presence of mirages, mysterious figures who can join with a person to give them incredible power, similar to personas from Persona or stands from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. They are directly powered by a Mirage Master's Performa. Subtle Atlas. which is essentially the manifestation of their abilities in the performing arts. Yeah, kinda sounds stupid when you say it out loud, but to be honest, if you just kinda go with it, and don't take it too seriously, this concept actually works kinda well. Anyway, Itsuki and Tsubasa use their latent abilities to bind with two of the Mirages, which give them the power of the Mirage Master. They eventually meet up with Itsuki's other friend, Toma, who was already a Mirage Master, and they find out that one of Tokyo's biggest entertainment companies, Fortuna Entertainment, is actually a front for a secret organization dedicated to studying the Mirages and defending the Earth from invaders from the Idolosphere. Itsuki and Tsubasa decide to join the company and join the entertainment business. And now it's up to you and a motley crew of various entertainers to make it big in the industry while also stopping a nefarious plot to destroy the world. Got all that? So back when I first played this game, I just really didn't care about the story at all. But to be perfectly honest, playing it again this time, knowing what to expect and keeping my expectations grounded, I enjoyed it a lot more the second time around. Granted, I still think the middle parts get pretty repetitive, not to mention the second and fourth chapters are virtually identical.
This is identical to the second chapter, isn't
Max,
it, Kyle?
Max, you see, it gets better.
Kyle, this is identical to the second chapter.
Max, it
Kyle,
gets better, I promise.
listen, Kyle,
Max.
no, you listen, Kyle. This is the same chapter where you have to, you have to you go up to the boss and he's like, oh, I'm super powerful and you're not good enough to do the thing that I want to do. And then, oh no, I'm super weak. And then Tsubasa's gonna go do the power of anime and she gets the be able to do it.
And the last two acts of the game give you a serious case of whiplash when the game suddenly remembers, oh yeah, we're supposed to be a Fire Emblem crossover. But now being more open to the whole entertainment industry and idol stuff, I was actually able to get into it a bit more. I thought Tsubasa's arc with her sister was quite touching, though short-lived, and Yashiro's arc was surprisingly compelling. All the B-plots are actually quite good, but the main story is still honestly kind of a wash. And I think that has a lot to do with the story's main character, Itsuki. You remember that little gag I made at the end of my Rowan video? No, the worst lord is obviously Itsuki from Tokyo Mirage Sessions. Yeah, that wasn't really just a gag. Itsuki might just be the most boring, unoriginal, blank slate, one-note protagonist I've ever seen. Worse than Rowan, worse than Corrin. He's actually the worst Fire Emblem lord. I'm not even exaggerating. He's just nothing. And sure, unlike Corrin, he doesn't actively hurt the story or the narrative, but there's just really nothing to him. They even acknowledge that there's literally no reason for him to be at Fortuna because he doesn't really have any real interest in the entertainment industry, or really any specific talents at all. So how exactly does he have a Mirage? Why exactly is he part of this situation? If the main protagonist couldn't give two shits about what's happening, why should I? And I think that's where a lot of the problems with the story come from. I can't get invested because the main character's not invested, and there's just nothing to him. I can't. He's terrible. But I think where this game shines the most is its main cast of characters, again, apart from Itsuki. And particularly the side stories, which I actually did enjoy upon first playing it. First and foremost is Tsubasa, Itsuki's childhood friend, obligatory love interest, and the emotional center for most of the story. In fact, I'd go as far as to say she's the real main character in my eyes. And she's definitely one of the most likable characters in the cast, not to mention just absolutely adorable. I mean, think about it, they gave her the spirit slot in Smash Ultimate and not Itsuki. She's the only one. Her story centers around wanting to become an idol, following in the footsteps of her sister who suddenly disappeared in front of her eyes 7 years prior. Now while that starts pretty interesting and gives Tsubasa some depth, it resolves pretty quickly at the end of the first chapter, and then she's left with very little progression other than overcoming her shyness and anxiety to succeed in the entertainment industry. That said, the shenanigans she gets up to in her side quests and her remaining story arcs are pretty fun to watch, and her cute personality is very endearing. Next up is Toma, Itsuki's excitable best friend and wannabe action hero. While he doesn't end up doing much in the main story, his side quests reveal layers to his personality and backstory you wouldn't otherwise see. It involves this kid whose parents had a divorce, so Toma's entire reason for becoming an action hero is to show this kid that there's still happiness and you can still have courage in this world. It's actually surprisingly good. Next up is Kiria Kurono, a famous pop star / idol who Tsubasa looks up to and eventually befriends. Her whole thing is that she has a tough exterior and exudes an aloof and cool personality, but she hides a more vulnerable, cute side, like liking anime OPs, keeping stuffed animals. She definitely has one of the most fun side quests in the entire game, and some of the things that she gets up to are really, really funny. Next we have Mamori, a 12-year-old girl who has a sort of children's cooking show where she microwaves things. Sure, okay. She's alright. She has an arc about finding herself and wanting to go into singing and all that. She has a sort of sibling relationship with the whole cast and mainly Itsuki, although it's kind of the anime kind.
Well, when a girl says that they want to learn how to cook, it's not just for their job.
Excuse me?
Kiss me, you fool!
No! No!
Which would be fine if we didn't already have Tiku, who basically fills that same role. Of course, then there's her deal with another character in the story, and we'll get to him in a bit. Later on in the story, you get Eleonora, a half-European teenage actress trying to make her big break into TV. She has some good moments, but overall, she's probably one of the least memorable characters. Nothing bad or obstructive per se, it's just she doesn't really leave much of an impression on me. And finally, we have Yashiro, another famous pop star. He starts the game as a sort of anti-hero / minor antagonist, but eventually joins your team late in the game. He's probably one of the most interesting characters, as unlike most of the cast sans Tsubasa, he actually has some real investment in the main story and a backstory to match. Also, his side stories are pretty great, as he sort of has a little rivalry with Toma, and then he has a thing with Mamori. It's the greatest thing ever. There's also 3 primary background characters who help outside of combat. First, you have Maiko, the CEO of Fortune Entertainment, who has a dry sense of humor and an affinity for drinking copious amounts of alcohol. She's pretty fun, but she's mostly memorable to me because we gave her a funny voice on stream.
I was wondering if you'd be interested in a private lesson. It'd be fabulous, scandalous, delicious.
Then there's Barry, a former rock guitarist from the US who decided one day that he wanted to be a fucking weeb instead. He has some of the most enjoyable and funny dialogue in the game, but there's an uncomfortable aspect to him, and that's his, liking toward Mamori. See, Mamori sort of sees Barry as a kind of father figure, and they try to play it like that, but the way Barry constantly talks about her as well, it's really weird and uncomfortable and just gives me really icky vibes. Stop, just leave, no. Can we not? Just don't do that. Don't, please, no. And finally, there's Tiki, here to remind the audience that, oh right, this is supposed to be a Fire Emblem game. She's the only Mirage who at least somewhat retains her actual appearance from Fire Emblem. She basically acts as your upgrade system. She can take materials you gather and forge them into more powerful weapons, give you passive abilities, and promote your Mirages. She does actually have a pretty great side story that is both funny and also a bit touching. There are a few other minor characters as well, like Tsubasa's sister, some of the antagonists, but they're not really important for this video, so just play the game yourself. Other than that, that's pretty much everybody, right? Well, kinda. So let's talk about the Mirages. This is the primary way in which the Fire Emblem series is represented in the game. Each of the Mirages bound to the main characters are characters from either Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon or Fire Emblem Awakening. We have Chrom, Tharja, and Virion from Awakening, and then we have Sita, Kain, Drog, and Navarre from Shadow Dragon as our playable ally Mirages. A few other characters pop up as enemy Mirages throughout the game, like Bord and Cord, Lon'qu, Lind, Aversa, Gangrel, etc. They're basically the persona for each of the main characters. Now, that's actually a pretty cool idea on the surface, and if done right, a great way to mix both franchises. Unfortunately, there is one caveat here. It seems that all of the Mirages suffer from a convenient case of amnesia, so they have absolutely no memories or knowledge of who they are or what they are apart from their names. They have no recollection of the events from Fire Emblem, or how they got to this world, or what the Mirages even are, or what their purpose is. Nothing. And frankly, to me, this is where the whole crossover aspect of this game kind of crumbles and falls apart. Let me explain. It's my philosophy that people, and by extension characters, are the sum of their experiences. Their memories are who they are. Sure, you can have personality traits, but that alone doesn't make a good character. Anyone can make a character with personality traits, but a good character is made when those personalities inform events in their lives, and vice versa. How they change, how they grow, how they experience the world, that's what makes a good character. So when you take Chrom, for example, but you don't have him remember anything that happened in Awakening or even who he is at all, what you are left with is just a guy named Chrom. They could have made this a completely different character and nothing would change. And that unfortunately applies to pretty much all of the Mirages. Sure, Tharja is still stalkerish and obsesses over the MC, but without her experiences, her backstory, or anything that gives her any depth, this could literally be any other stalkerish character in media. You could just change out the names and nothing would change. As a result, this crossover really only extends itself as lip service. It's hollow. The only thing that indicates this is a crossover, at least at the storytelling level, are the characters' names and nothing else. Sure, towards the end they basically rehash the plot of Shadow Dragon, but even then the Mirages don't get their memories back fully, and I think that kind of cripples this game. If they had just made this game its own thing without including any of the Fire Emblem characters, make these Mirages their own separate characters, I think this game would have been more successful and more widely received. And since this video is already running pretty long, I think I'm gonna have to call it here. Next time we're gonna talk about the gameplay, the presentation, and most importantly, that music. So until then,
壊したい大事そうに抱えた私を全部君がこの孤独を痛みを癒すの消えてしまいたい眠らない街のざわめき